we're going to chat it up. Myself and my producer, sometimes host of this podcast when it's live stream version after games. What other compliments can I? Oh, he finished. Here we go. He finished in second place in our Oscar pool from Sunday night to my wife, Dolores.
I don't know how she does it.
She's a savant.
That was impressive. Yeah. I don't want to bore people too much with Oscar stuff because if you looked at the ratings for the Oscars,
I haven't yet.
Dude. So
wait,
go ahead.
What were they? I just want to know what they were down from. Like,
so last year, the lowest Oscars ever to date last year was 23.9. 23 million people watched the Oscars last year, the lowest ever.
Okay.
This year was 9.8. 9.8 million people watched the Oscars this year. Yeah, John's face is, if you're watching this on YouTube, it's appropriate, which I can also say I saw this coming because, look, you know me. I love talking movies. The next project I'm working on is a movie thing. But I also see the numbers of our podcast when they drop. And I saw significantly what they looked like after we did a full movie pod with Hats and Yash. And it wasn't a terrible drop like, 23.9 to 9.7.
Gotcha.
Like the Oscars got. But just plain and simple, people aren't interested in the industry as much as they used to, especially with the movies that were nominated this year.
No, I get it.
But all that being said, shout out to Mrs. Macri, the terminator of our movie pool on Sunday. Because I got to be honest, and this is just my own insecurities, Oz is going off and you guys are all like, oh, look at Dolores, keeps winning. And I'm like, I also have 12 of 12 predicted guys.
Yeah, but you follow this shit. My wife is like,
But then she pulls Colette out of nowhere.
Pulls it out of her ass.
For documentary. It's like, I am dealing with a savant here. Okay.
Anyway, so we have some Knicks stuff that we're gonna chat about. We should probably just start by saying the Knicks winning streak is over, as I alluded to at the beginning of the show. That stunk.
I wore my hoodie to bed last night.
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking about it all day today because I was very positive after the game, and I still feel positive about it and whatnot because, again, it's, intellectually you tell yourself Julius Randle had a bad game, RJ Barrett had a bad game. Really, nobody had a good game except for Derrick Rose. Nobody that, none of the shot makers. Mm-hmm. But, man, would have been nice to win that one.
It would have, but
would have been nice.
You want to talk about rational? I think this whole season we've hit points of irrational confidence, and it started literally the third preseason game where they had that comeback against. They played the Cavs in the preseason. It was the Emmanuel Quickley start that he had against the Cavs. Well, so it's both of them. So the third game they had that fourth quarter comeback, and all of us were like, you know what, this team can make the 10 seed. They can be a play-in team. And then the next game, Kevin Knox hits 7 threes and they blow out the Cavs. And it's like, maybe they could be the 8th seed in the play-in tournament. And throughout this year, the goalpost has consistently moved.
Yes.
Then this winning streak happened. And what thought of like, let's just avoid the play-in tournament has become like, maybe they can catch the Bucks. So it actually was a nice, not a reality check, but for me at least, it was okay. Now I can talk about this team knowing they can lose again. And now they go out west and it wouldn't be as disappointing if they go into Memphis next week on a 12-game winning streak, the team that won the winning streak, and then all of a sudden it crashes and burns there. Now we can have some realistic, rational conversations about it.
What the tough part is for me is like, I've been watching, as have you, been watching sports a long time and watching the NBA for as long as I could remember. You when you're watching a team where you're like, I don't have to worry about the bottom falling out ever anymore. And I know I've said it a few times where I'm like on like post-game live streams where I'm like, that's it. We're for real. We don't have to have those concerns anymore. And then it's amazing. You lose one game to the team with the second best record in the entire league. And now it's like they're going to play Chicago on Wednesday night. And I'm like, got to get this game. Mm-hmm. Big game, huge game. Can't lose this game. And it's because you're worried that like this 6-game West Coast trip is coming up and there's no, Houston's a patsy. But then it's like, what if they ever lost to Houston? What if Christian Wood had to get, And that's the feeling that like I can't wait until I don't have that anymore. But then again, it won't be as fun. So I don't know. What I'm saying.
I will say this, like that built-in PTSD is a part of being a Knicks fan, right?
It is.
I'm wearing a Mets hat currently. It is part of being a Mets fan. I don't overreact to April baseball anymore, but I've seen some sky is falling tweets because Francisco Lindor was hitting 170 7 games into the season. It's a shame he has 154 games to figure it out. I will say this. The only thought of worry I had was when they just couldn't buy a basket. It was a little concerning that down the stretch, I thought the Suns were going to run out of gas because they played Brooklyn last night.
They played the previous night, yeah.
It seemed like they hit an extra gear and the Knicks ran out of gas down the stretch. But like the encouraging moral victory I actually take away from last night, down 111-102, I thought, okay, we're headed for...
Oh, it was game over.
Like I thought we were looking at a double-digit loss that's going to not look as close as the game was in the box score.
Yep.
Then they make that late run and it's 113-110. And if a Hall of Fame point guard didn't turn into a Hall of Fame point guard, they might have actually had a shot to tie the game. So I take that fight as, you know what, regardless of what happens out west, like this team's going to be in a bunch of games. There's no unwinnable game the rest of the season.
No, there isn't. And it was one Chris Paul miracle shot, one Chris Paul really good 3-pointer, and then the offensive rebound that they didn't get. And I'm pretty sure there was like a Bullock makeable miss that was in there. So anyway, so I just, I'll have something coming out for the newsletter later this week in which I'm going to go through every team of the last decade that has outpaced their preseason over-under by at least 13, by over 13 games, which the Knicks are on pace to do in a shortened season, by the way. And it's interesting to go back and look and see how those things went right, how those things went wrong. And spoiler alert, it's going to come down to Randle and like what is Randle. And that's why I guess that's the difference, right? I remember a little bit more than you, but I'm sure you remember too what it was like to watch Patrick Ewing. And as long as Patrick Ewing was on your team, you were always going to be in it. And then 12-13, it was Melo with that cast of characters. 6 games in, it was like, all right, we're going to be fine. I mentally, I'm still not there with Randle as much as I've been the one saying he's a shoo-in for all NBA. So
that race is over, by the way. He is a shoo-in for all NBA. Because as much as we don't like the national media and certain guys like Simmons and Lowe and
everybody's saying it.
The people that drive the narrative. Simmons had him on his first team on the latest pod.
Well, how much do you factor in games played? And that's the biggest. That's going to be the biggest question.
Well, it's as far as I'm concerned, it's warranted. But as far as like the fact that he's putting him ahead of LeBron, he's putting him ahead of Paul George, like that conversation, I thought, like when we've had this conversation, it's been, well, what are they going to vote for? What is the narrative going to be? And now it's shifted in his favor that arguably the biggest sports basketball mind outside of Zach Lowe is putting him on his all NBA team.
Well, he's the most listened to, but
what I'm saying. The guy that can drive the narrative probably better than anybody else is now saying that.
If the narrative becomes in this season when quite literally everybody except the MVP and this dude have been dropping like flies, and even guys who haven't been dropping like flies. Well, Dame Lillard did miss some games, but now Dame Lillard's breaking down. Not breaking down, but he's in a really bad slump. If you haven't been paying attention the last 8 games or so for Portland, like nobody has been able to keep it up. And Randle is in this very strange, one-of-a-kind season. So yeah, I think it should become a bigger issue, not a smaller issue, but we got a few weeks before we get there. What else? Sorry.
That's just the biggest takeaway from me of the winning streak is now Julius Randle, like the most improved player is done. Like he's won that.
That's done. That's over.
All of the other accolades that the Knicks are going to get this season there's now something to point to. This team won 9 games in a row. I was concerned they were ever going to get to 4 in a row, and they did it twice. So I'm now at the point where us Knicks fans, we actually have like playoff basketball to look forward to. Like say they do have a disappointing West Coast trip and they finish 4-6 down the stretch. That's still 38 wins. That'll be enough to be the 6th seed.
I hope.
You think? What team is going to turn it around all of a sudden? I don't trust Boston. I don't trust Miami.
I have too much respect for what Miami does.
I respect, but at what point are we just going to look at their net rating and their point differential and say, you know what, that might just be what you are?
Yeah, it's funny. Is their net rating still around 20 or 19 or 18, whatever? Yeah. It's not good. It's been bad all year, and you figure with Butler back, but Butler's been back for a long time now. It's been a while since Butler was out with COVID. That was the beginning of the year, or protocols. I don't know if he had it or whatever. I don't know. I think they need to finish. Like if you're going to give me 4 and 6 down the stretch, these last 10 games. I think that gets them in the. I think that gets them a top 6 seed. Me too. I think,
and that's worst case scenario. 5-5, 6-4, like all these scenarios that get them to 40 wins and up. You know,
I'm and look, nothing is guaranteed. The Clippers lost to the Pelicans. Granted, the Clippers are very banged up right now. But again, who's to say what are they going to look like when the Knicks go into LA? Is LeBron going to be LeBron? We have to see LeBron on the court. We don't know that. Utah has lost 2 straight games to Minnesota. But hey, I don't feel as bad about the Minnesota loss now. That I wanted to say that.
Even more so, Minnesota's beaten Utah all 3 times.
All 3 times. Craziness.
Yeah.
Madness.
So the thing I wanted to surprise you with.
Oh yeah, you said you were going to surprise me. So go. So
the Chris Paul convo that we started on Locker Room a couple weeks ago, that's now started to gain steam of can he opt out?
Yeah.
Is there a scenario where last season the Knicks could have gotten Chris Paul without trading Randle? Because that's what I keep going back to, is that even if I did now in hindsight say the Knicks should have traded Chris Paul, traded for Chris Paul, is there any scenario that happens without Randle? Could they have all those guys that were on 1-year player team options? Could they have opted in or picked up their options and then traded like Bobby Portis and Wayne Ellington out there as expiring contracts?
There was God, I remember like it was yesterday. Me and Jay, back when JB used to cover basketball, we were texting back and forth one day about what would be the wisdom of picking up the options for trade purposes. And literally the only difference is that you wouldn't have the $1 million in dead money for those guys on the books. No, it would have come down to not signing the guys that they did. It would have come down to maybe, not taking on, what was it, Ed Davis's contract. It would have involved some like their season, assuming they would have the way to do it without trading Randle, it would have come down to probably not signing like an Alec Burks or an Nerlens Noel. And I don't, if you're going to give me, they could have just not signed Elfrid Payton. That would not have gotten it done, because they would have been operating as an under the cap. They would have been operating as an under the cap team. So the salary matching would have been a little, it's not as, cause usually I don't want to get into the weeds on this, but suffice it to say, it would have involved them trading Randle. And that's a great pickup, because I had not even thought about that.
Because then the other question, the hypothetical, because last night down the stretch, seeing what Chris Paul did, I mean, you have to wonder. Like the takeaway I had as far as just them losing last night, it sucked to lose, but one team had Chris Paul, the other didn't. The biggest difference in the Suns this year is they have a legitimate veteran closer that still has some time left in him. Yeah. So I then wonder, since we've seen what Obi Toppin looks like with a competent point guard on the floor, what's a higher ceiling for the Knicks? I love Randle. I love what he's done this year. But would you have rather have rolled the dice with a trade that would have sent Randle to the Suns and then Chris Paul's here? And
not even a little bit.
Okay. You wouldn't trade the season for anything.
I wouldn't. For me, Randle's emergence as a star this season is, make sure I measure myself before I say something stupid. Mm-hmm. It'll be stupid. So here's what I was about to say, and I'll say it. I think it was the biggest thing that could have happened to this franchise, aside from winning the lottery this upcoming year and getting Cade. And I even have my doubts about that. And here's why. I'm not suggesting Julius Randle is going to be a better player, is over the next however many years is going to be a better player than Cade Cunningham is going to be. Cade Cunningham might be a future Hall of Famer for all we know. Probably will be. But the fact that he's not just an all-star, He's an all NBA player and a guy who, if you could squint and look at him, how he's playing now, and imagine him with a Chris Paul or a Kyle Lowry or a name your really good point guard with RJ Barrett continuing to get better. You could squint and see a world where he gets into where he's in like the outskirts of the MVP conversation now, and gets into the MVP, like the actual, like, is Julius Randle the MVP? If, again, a lot of things have to go right, but is he playing well enough that players who have played this well and hit shots at this rate and ran their teams in this way, those guys they have gotten into the top 2 or 3 of MVP conversations before. And so you put that piece there, you factor in his age, 26. And then is the most important part. He did it here under a regime that believed in him. And boy, did that. I mean, the ripples of that Woj interview are going to be felt in this. I think in this league for a very long time, because how much did they believe in me? They fucking came and took the job to run the franchise. That's how much they believed in me. And Kenny Payne and the Tom Thibodeau of it all and the whole thing. And, that to me is as big a piece as arguably as his play on the court, or it goes hand in hand with the improvement on the court. And then the only other thing I'll just say, because you're like, okay, well, where are they going to get the point guard from? I mean, I think we, as Knicks fans, should start maybe expanding our horizons.
What do you mean?
In terms of thinking of possible guys. Like, I'm just going to throw some out there. Like, Portland, as I just said, is losing a lot of games.
Say it. I need to hear it.
Just, again, look at the West. The Lakers are not going anywhere. Mm-hmm. The Clippers are not going anywhere. The Nuggets, knock on wood, Jamal Murray gets back healthy, are not going anywhere. The Jazz are not going anywhere. Like, those are 4 teams right there. Theoretically, the Pelicans could get their shit together. The Suns are obviously doing very well this year. Like, there are like the Thunder have all the picks in the world. Like, those, at some point they will do something and like come up as a franchise and be something. Like the Spurs are the Spurs. Like, if you're Dame Lillard and you're in Portland and you're like, okay, so I got a backcourt partner who is really good and he's like almost kind of sort of an all-star and he makes $30 million a year and he's my second best player. And then I'm looking, and then it's like, okay, well, I got like Robert Covington and I got some like vaguely interesting young. Like, what's to say that Dame Lillard couldn't be had this offseason? Like, why is that insane?
You want to talk about PTSD. I'm not believing that the Knicks are getting somebody until he's here. But
I'm just,
as far as narrative goes,
but this isn't the same
on here changes things.
This isn't the same bullshit, which is like, oh, it's the Knicks. Someone will want to come play for the Knicks because they're the Knicks. That was always bullshit. That's where the PTSD comes from, because that was nonsense and it was shoved down our throats because of clicks and views and things. But like, if you're the Knicks now and you're a 4 seed and there's an opening here for a playmaker to come in and be the point guard who leads the Knicks to the fucking promised land and have statues built for you around the city of New York, and like, I don't know. Why is that insane?
So
they can put together
my counter.
Sure.
Not necessarily in the sense that I don't see it happening, because if you just took the Knicks out of it, like the label of it, you're muted.
Yeah, I'm not saying I'm seeing it happening, but I'm like, why is that not?
Why is it insane?
Yeah.
Okay. So if you just take the teams out of it and just say a team that like led the league in defense, is in the Eastern Conference, it has an all-star, has a bunch of have cap space and draft picks and a lot of young players with potential. Yes, I could see it an all-star, a superstar, an all-NBA staple wanting to come here. Fine. I'm with you. They have rehabilitated their image that much. It actually then leads to my other thought on Chris Paul, because you and I have been tossing around 3 for $90 if you wanted to come here. I don't think that's going to be enough to get it done. I think the Suns will match whatever counteroffer. Then he would have to literally say, "I don't want to play for the Phoenix Suns anymore."
He would need to be like, "I want to come to New York."
Which all we've heard is he wants to go play closer to his kid and like where his kid is living and where he lives in Los Angeles.
And so it may not be Chris Paul, and that's fine.
Which is why Dame Lillard is interesting.
Is he 29 years old? He's 30 years old? I think he's 30.
Something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, he's 29 or 30. I think whatever. It doesn't matter. He signed for 4 more years. A lot of money. A lot of money. He's as much money as anybody in the NBA over the next 4 years. I think his last year of his contract's like $48 million or something. But it's okay because he's Dame Lillard. I'm also not sure. Like, here's the thing. Look, there's always trades to be made, right? There's always trades to be made. You could always finagle a trade. But if you look at the 3 other preeminent destination franchises on the coasts, Brooklyn, and the 2 LA teams, they are boxed in. Like they have no assets there is no Dame Lillard trade awaiting any of those teams. The Nets made their Dame Lillard trade. The Lakers made their Dame Lillard trade in the forms of James Harden and Anthony Davis, respectively. The Clippers made their Dame Lillard trade for Paul George. They have nothing left to trade. So then you go to Miami and it's like, okay, the looming dark horse in every trade conversation. How are they going to do it? Well, yeah, I mean, I guess there's a world where they cobble together enough, but then it's like they don't have any really picks to speak of. So if you're Portland and you're like, okay, I could have Tyler Herro and like a first-round pick, and like whatever, Precious Achua or something. Mm-hmm. Or I could take all of New York's picks and Emmanuel Quickly and Obi Toppin and like Mitchell Robinson or whatever, whoever they get.
There's a name I think you haven't said yet that I think would have to go in a Dame Lillard trade.
Well, there's RJ Barrett. He's not going anywhere.
I don't want him to.
He's not going anywhere. They're not trading RJ Barrett.
Why wouldn't Portland say we want RJ Barrett? And then
because New York says no.
But then the conversation, why wouldn't it end there?
Because I still think the Knicks could put together the best trade unless, and there's caveats with this, Philly decides to offer up Ben Simmons. That's the only other team I could think of because it doesn't make sense for Denver, even if they were going to part with MPJ because they have Jamal Murray, and I still think they believe in Jamal Murray, and he'll be back stronger than ever. Like there's no other obvious, like, all right, I'm Dame Lillard. It's come to this point in my career. I want to go try to win a title someplace. But I also don't. Here's the thing. I don't want to seem like I'm joining a bandwagon. That's the other thing for Dame.
That would be the Knicks then. They're the other team that doesn't have. Although Randle has elevated himself to that.
I think there's
reputation superstar. Yeah.
I think there's just enough bloom left on the rose that if someone were to come here, it could be perceived as. It's not Durant going to the Warriors. It is the opposite of that.
So then I ask all aggregators out there listening that if you start to hear Dame Lillard trade hypotheticals or some rumblings from national podcast hosts, heard it here first on Knicks Film School Podcast.
I'm just shooting the shit.
I know you are.
I'm just shooting the shit.
See, this I think also speaks to, and this can now circle back to the winning streak. This speaks to how incredible this season has been and what that streak was. I think as Knicks fans, we all, especially after the trauma, weird word to use, but the 2019 summer that was trauma. That was trauma. Okay, I'm comparing it to real trauma, but maybe for some of us it was
real trauma.
Okay,
Andrew,
you're still working through it. You'll be hearing an ad for BetterHelp on the pod today. I shouldn't
laugh at that, but yes, you will.
BetterHelp. Listen, someone who's been using it, believe me, it works. Maybe I
could have used it
in 2019.
I could have used it in
there you go. Yeah, this might be a better ad than anything.
Would you like to go back in time and have help for when you were sitting alone in a dark room with an open bottle of gin? Anyway, continue, please.
Because the Knicks didn't get Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving.
Because a basketball team that doesn't know you exist couldn't get the basketball players that you wanted them to get.
So the point of all this to say, I think we've all trained ourselves, especially after that summer, that there is a certain level of player we have to, like a tier that we can't go to as far as they're coming here. We need to go to like the 35-year-old Chris Pauls, the eventual Karl-Anthony Towns, like the guys that don't make all NBA, but that next tier of player, which is why people are saying Lonzo and Kyle Lowry and Dennis Schroeder. And maybe that's what this winning streak has done, is shown some competency, has shown that like as the work has actually been done, and like New York's still an attractive free agent destination again. It's not as bad as it used to be, despite what Max Kellerman says.
Well, take out the words free agent, because again, and I'll lean on
trade destination. Yeah,
it's destination. That is what it is. It's just a destination. It's I said it on the pod a few weeks ago, and I echoed what Wendy said on his pod recently. It's like you just have to be a team that a guy wants to go to, and it'll get figured out from there.
Yeah,
and like I would be remiss if I just did not remind folks from 2018 article in the Deseret News. That's my big brother, Lillard said. I remember barely being in the 7th grade, getting ready for an AAU tournament, and Johnny Bryant, Knicks assistant coach, was in college at Utah, and they would come back and scrimmage us on the courts with no net.
Oh boy, I love it. Start the movement, John. And I swear, if and when the conversation starts happening nationally, we better get the credit.
It shouldn't start happening nationally, because the focus should not be on Dame Lillard coming to the Knicks. The focus should be on the Knicks.
I agree.
I'm just saying, that as you brought up the significance of the 9-game winning streak and the significance of the season as a whole, which is, again, it's not the Wizards just won 8 games in a row, right? Mm-hmm. That means shit. Nobody gives a shit. One, because it's Washington and nobody gives a shit about Washington.
Look at all 8 teams they play.
Yeah, that too. Well, not listen. Not that we played any world beaters, but it's just when you
6
do
of
it.
The 9 teams or playoff teams. Like,
yes, you're right. No, yes, but there
Wizards did. The Wizards. I felt like they played the Cavs every night for all 8 games.
It was more or less the Cavs. But they started the streak with the Jazz. But again, how's that looking? Because the Jazz have been struggling lately. Anyway, my point is, when you do something like this, when the stakes are real, and for anybody who was paying attention, and I know anybody listening to this podcast was paying attention, the stakes could not have been more real, because there was 3 months of good vibes on the line going into that Memphis game. And it felt like, oh shit, everything could come crashing down. And then the streak happened. And it's like, and it all goes together, the Tibbs of it all, and the Leon Rose, and the Johnny Bryan, and the Kenny Payne, and the World Wide West, and the Julius Randle. It all goes together. It's all good stuff. And look, it shouldn't be about Dame Lillard, but it should be about continuing to believe that more good things will be on the way. That's all.